Welcome back. Well, we're looking at our next corporate conversation now, and the company in question is Century Ply. Now, the fourth quarter was a slightly weak quarter for the company, but Century Ply has given a double-digit revenue growth guidance for the current financial year. So is the target on track? And what's the demand outlook? To talk about this, we have with us Mr. Keshav Bhajanka, Executive Director of Century Plyboards. Mr. Bhajanka, thank you very much for joining in. Let's start by, talking about how the first quarter has shaped up for you. If you could just tell us about the demand trends and the volume improvement that you may be seeing, and just break it up across your different categories, laminates, plywood. What's going on so far in the first quarter?
Sure. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I think, as we had discussed earlier as well, what is happening is that there was a lack of inventory in the market, inventory in terms of the new housing that came into play after COVID, that was under construction and that had not really hit the market. Our job begins when it goes from a house to a home. So I think now the early signs are that new inventory is hitting the market. And I think this bodes very well for us. The current financial year, like you have rightly mentioned, is going to be a strong year for us. Our guidance across segments has been double-digit plus for plywood, 20% plus for laminates, 40% plus for MDF, and 25% for particle board. I think we're well on track to achieve the same and perhaps exceed on it.
But will it be patchy, Keshav? That was the question, because first quarter we've had elections, we've had this heat wave, etc. So just trying to understand, your full year targets are intact, but could it be off to a slow start? I mean, should we be prepared for that? So just some color on Q1 trends, please.
I think Q1 is looking quite positive, and overall we will be well within. We'll be in line with the guidance. Of course, there are some new capacities, for instance, the Andhra Pradesh project that commenced in March itself. So that will take time to ramp up. But overall, Q1 has been pretty much in line with what we had thought. One or two segments might face slight pressure, but overall, we will have a decent growth in Q1.
Okay, all right. Hi, Keshav. Good morning and good to see you, Ben.
Good morning.
What about ADD on imports on MDF? That's been something that the industry has been screaming out for. Is there an update on that front, and do you expect it to come in the near future?
Currently, I don't have an update on. As you know, BIS will come into play from the first quarter of next year. February, rather the fourth quarter of this year. February is when BIS is likely to be implemented, and that is going to be a huge boost for us, because at the present moment, imports of an inferior quality are competing with us, which is hampering our ability to scale up. But as of now, there's no further update on ADD.
Okay, no further update on ADD. Got it. Can you tell us what is the incremental revenues that you could gain? Keshav, by the way, good morning and thanks for joining in. What are the incremental revenues that you see in FY25, given the kind of capacity utilization that you're expecting on your new plants? Because I heard you mention that you may exceed your guidance for FY25 as well. Once this capacity utilization comes through, then what is the incremental revenues that we're looking at?
So I would not like to quantify the overall figure, but like I've said, double-digit plus for plywood, 20% plus for laminates, 40% plus for MDF, and 25% for particle board. So weighted average, we're looking at a strong growth, which would be well in excess of 15%.
And would this also mean gains in terms of market share? Because in the plywood and laminate segment, you're sitting at about 6 to 7% market share. Is there scope to grow further there?
Definitely. As you know, there's a trend from unorganized to organized, particularly in the case of plywood, which is aiding us in gaining market share within the plywood space. MDF, with the commencement of the new plant, because till now we have been a predominantly north player. Our capacity was in Hoshiarpur, which you know is far north. So now, with the commencement of a plant in South India, we are likely to gain a lot of market share in MDF as well, because we'll be a pan-India player. So I think overall, we will be adding to our market share.
Any internal target that you're working with? I mean, double digit, high teens, anything that you're looking at by, say, over the next 2 to 3 years?
Our objective has been to, maintain 25% plus in the organized space within plywood. And, well, when we look at that, we, I think, are more than that at the moment. As far as MDF, yes, we are looking to drastically increase market share. because like at a 40% plus growth in revenue, industry that is growing at 20% means that you are gaining market share. Laminates, we have actually lost out in terms of market share over the course of the past 1 year, which we are looking to correct in the current year.
Keshav, let's talk margins, because in the plywood segment in the fourth quarter, your margins had come down. Laminates, they were okay. MDF also, there was a margin erosion. Now you're talking about, I think, margin improvement through the course of the year. What makes you confident that margins will recover? And give us some update on pricing as well. Both volume growth and some indication of price movements so far in the first quarter, if you can.
Sure. So in terms of pricing, I think that we have taken increase in plywood as of last month, and the basic hindrance to us is a lot of increase in raw material cost, which is likely to persist for the remainder of the year, or maybe slightly beyond that as well. Having said that, in terms of margin guidance, we are fairly confident that the guidance we have given for the entire year, which is 12 to 14% for plywood, 10 to 12% for laminates, 15% for MDF, and 15% for particle board, we will be more or less in line with the same. Of course, the objective will be to improve on that. The primary reason for a reduction in margins is the increase in timber cost, and I think this has not been able to be passed on to the market yet. Maybe over the course of the year we will be able to, in which case we can look at higher margins, but at the moment this is the guidance we are going with.
So just to reiterate, you're saying that plywood, there's been some price increase last month. How much would the price increase be? And in the other segments as well, what is the likely price increase that you would be factoring in, considering the margin guidance?
In plywood, the price increase would be to the tune of 2%. Whereas in the rest of the segments, I don't see any potential for price increase at the moment. Perhaps, as I said, over the course of the year, if there is scope for price increases, we should.
Okay, all right. Final question, Keshav, before we let you go. You're going at a run rate of around 1,000 crores, 1,050 crores odd per quarter. So that makes it around 4,000 crores on an annual basis. But as you mentioned, you had a couple of units that have come on stream. At peak levels, what is the revenue potential the company can do?
I think for our Andhra unit at peak potential, we should be able to hit a revenue of close to 1,000 crores. And this is going to add to our top line substantially. Once the new particle board unit comes into play, that also can look at a 500 to 600 crore revenue increase. So I think these two units are going to be large revenue drivers for us in the near future.
Okay, before we let you go, any expectations from the budget this time? The full-blown budget kicks in July. From a sectoral point of view, what are you looking at?
I think, the cabinet and the Prime Minister have pushed on housing substantially, and I'm hoping that that thrust continues. So nothing in particular, but I hope that they keep doing more of the same. As you know, that certain announcements have been made recently, which bode well for affordable housing. So I'm hoping that they continue with similar policies in the future.
All right, Keshav, appreciate you joining in. You're sounding quite optimistic about the rest of the fiscal year, and you're saying quarter one wasn't too bad, irrespective of the elections or any kind of slowdown talks. Thanks a lot for joining in and filling us in with all of those details.